茶コールが染み渡ったイチョウ並木の通りに有頂天に袖を振る金魚が泳ぐ記念窓のようさ簡単に嘘ぶけるラムネだまま魔法にかかったハムシのように淡い夢にとらわれこの夜を抜け出せない
Mature content warning. This computer software contains content that may be unsuitable for some players, including depictions of violence, sexual conduct, abuse, rape, mental illness, murder, discriminatory language, and suicide. This work does not in any way endorse or affirm criminal acts or violation of human rights. By continuing beyond this point, the user agrees he or she or they acknowledges the above, does not find such content described above offensive nor obscene, and is requesting this content as in good mental health. Hi! Hello! Hello everyone! Hello! It's me! Hello everyone, if you're new here, my name is Karavan. I usually stream on Twitch, but today we are on a pre-record video of a very long-awaited game that has been bugging everyone for me to play since the start of the series. Hashihime of the Old Booktown. We're season 4, baby! Whose ending we're gonna get now? I'm hoping for Hakase! Yeah! As you can see, I'm on my 5.0 model. Can you believe it's been 5.0? I think I started to have a new model each year, which I've been kind of quitting doing that. But you know what? Apparently I did. So this is 5.0 apparently. So yeah. Anyway, I rambled too long. I know everybody's really waiting for this game. Hopefully I do this justice. I literally make this outfit in Hakama because I wanna, you know, celebrate Hashihime of the Old Booktown. I made the outfit based on this. The original design of this outfit was actually a sweater look. It's not this. So, you know, I literally remade the design of the clothing just for this series. So, better appreciate it, okay? I mean, I think I'm still gonna remake it one day, but not today. Anyway, again, I can't stop rambling. This series always make me ramble. Okay, let's go. Can't wait. Okay, I don't know if this is a new part, but it suddenly like stopped. So I'm guessing this is a new part of the story. Honestly, I did not know where this one got cut off, so hopefully editing me knows. But let's start reading just in case it's the new one, right? As soon as I got off the streetcar and returned to my bachido, I heard voices arguing.
だから貴様など知らん。玉森くん、そんなどうして？
I miss him so much.
出てけ。
Get. Oh, I forgot about the other me in the shop. Professor fled the shop with tears in his eyes. I immediately... It is a choice! Okay, let's save. Grab his arm. I grabbed Professor's arm as he passed. No, wait, come back, we got a Nichi back! No, Hakase. Oh my god, I'm so excited. Finally, after 3 seasons, we're finally getting his route. His eyes widened when he confronted by a second me. Unlike him, I was considerably calm.
すみません。
すみません. That was all I wanted to tell him when I went out of my way to stop him. Professor's mouth flapped open and closed. He seemed to want an explanation. I gave up on the idea of explaining things to him, and I let go of his arm. He's hid deep under my umbrella again and headed into the shop. Inside the shop was me, holding a duster, muttering as he wandered around. I came up close behind him and tried asking some questions.
彼には何をされた？意味のわからんおもちゃを持ってこられた。ブリキのパケトンボやら絶対錆びない包丁やら、一体何の押し売りか。押し売りなどではない。は
Huh? I turned around, his eyes opening wide, when he saw the most surprising thing there.
次から次へと何なのだ。
With those last words, he turned to water and vanished. I went to take my ticket from his pocket, but my hand stopped before I could. I didn't expect to see Hakase-kun staring right at me when I turned around. He jumped, startled when I noticed him, then timidly closed his umbrella and walked up to me.
なるほど。
Naruhodo.
道理で話が通じないわけですね。
I didn't feel like telling him the whole story now either. But realizing I was the me he knew, the corner of his mouth lifted into a cheerful smile.
実は君に見てもらいたいものがありまして。
Professor started to rummage through the bag he had with him. The metallic sound of tin rubbing against tin grated on my nerves, making my eyes narrow. Praying me no mind, Professor pulled out a bamboo copter. His heart all aflutter. A bamboo copter? It was clearly a bamboo copter.
どうぞ。
Doza! I missed him so much. I love this one.
手のひらでこすらずに、下からこう羽に息を吹きかけてみてください。
I didn't have the energy to argue, so I held it up to the light like he urged me to. It was pretty light for thin. When I blew on it, it dimmed black shone silver as it danced in the air. Professor immediately brought his palm towards it when it started to descend. The bamboo copter flew back into the sky when he did.
竹とんぼ全体を帯電させ、静電気を利用して浮かび上がらせているんです。ほら、玉森くんも。
Tamamori-kun, he's so sweet. You missed him. He tossed the bamboo copter towards me like we were playing badminton. It gleamed bright as it fell tragically by my feet. He jumped towards the bamboo copter in a panic. Then once he noticed my apathetic stare, he pursed his lips, seemingly
お
embarrassed.
気に召しませんでしたか？見せたいものはまだ他にもありまして。あなたは楽しそうでいいですね。すみません。ごめんなさい。
大丈夫で。
目の前で人が消えたんですよ。
Hakase-kun has always been a bit odd though, we know him. And yet, he hadn't looked the least bit shocked and had accepted with, "Oh, I see." Professor held his breath and pressed the bamboo copter against his lips. And his eyes wandered while he seemed to search for his words. But perhaps unable to find the right thing to say, his head lowered a little.
前例がありますから。
え？
ともかく、僕と君の関係は何なのか詳しく聞きたくて参ったのです。どんな関係だったも何も、私とあなたは友人以下の知人未満です。嘘ですよね。分かったらさっさと帰ってください。
ください。He stared at me shocked and fell silent when I pierced him with my words. No. Then I rummaged through the register right in front of him.
何をしているんだね、玉森くん。
Tamamori-kun. I grabbed all the money in the register, stuffed it into my sleeve, and turned towards to leave the shop. Torobo. As expected, Hakase-kun stopped there, dumbfounded. His brows knit helplessly as he tilted his gaze towards me.
どうしてしまったんですか？
I'm facing issues, Hakase-kun.
君は当たり前のことかもしれませんが、まるで別人みたいだ。別人ってあなたに私の何がわかるんですか？
Tamamori is really mad. Honestly, same Hakase-kun, because I don't know what happened before. I was not paying attention.
私の素性も知らないくせに知った風な目で見ないでいただきたい。玉森くん。
Tamamori-kun. Even though I thought my outburst was pretty cruel, I was sure Hakase-kun knew I wasn't right in the head. But when he tried to distract me from my grief, when I had to painfully hold back my feelings like this, it felt like I could no longer stand being me anymore.
さっきも言いましたが、 あなたは本当に幸せそうでいいですよね。
いいですよね。
好きな本を好きなだけ買えて、道楽に惜しまず金を使えて、苦労なんかしたことないでしょう。
Chicken and dish. I don't know what happened to Tamamori, but I'm here for it.
玉森くん、君は
Tamamori-kun, kimi wa. Professor saying he loved me was nothing more than one of his whims, after all. It was obviously some sort of charity traced with contempt based on his preferences.
私をバカにするな。
Baka ni suru na.
バカになんか
I was a stupid man who never became a writer. My obsession with fantastical horror was outside the realm of pastimes. There was no way someone as foolish as that would be of any interest to a rich man. Hakase could swallow down the words he was about to say, then slowly let out a sigh.
君と僕は本当に友達未満だったのですね。僕はてっきりもう少し進んでいるのかと。
To which way, honey? My cat's blocking the camera. When I tried to walk by him to leave, Professor immediately blocked my path. Blocked my path may be exaggerating it. His eyes and his hands were moving restlessly as he pretended he had stood in my way on accident.
お金を持ってどちらに行かれるんですか？
Oh, kare.
あなたに関係ないでしょう。
関係ないでしょ。
もしかしてまた時間を戻してしまうおつもりですか？
He knew! Obviously, because he had the power, but how does he know? I wasn't thinking about that right now. Besides, I'll make sure to warn Minakami. I've done everything I needed to do. Whether Minakami lived or died no longer had to do anything with me. So, if we pick any other route, we always just gave up on Minakami, which is kind of sad. But I know that Hakase-kun.
そうですね。そのつもりです。
それは困ります。
Komarimasu!
どうしてあなたが困るんです？
だってここで君とお別れしてしまったら君と僕は二度と会えなくなってしまうじゃないですか。
Sob sad.
変なこと言ってごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。
Gomenasai. Professor's words had jabbed my heart more than expected. Ooh! I couldn't care less about his feelings or whatever, of course. My forever tsundere Tamamori. Up until this point, I hadn't gone back in time with the intention of saving Minakami. But I wasn't actually rewriting time. Wasn't I really just moving on to another world? Wow. Professor's feelings of sadness were clearly an expression of his focus on the future. That must have been the proof that the days went on even in the world I disappeared from. In that case, how many times had I come to destroy the world?
君は何のために時間を繰り返しているんですか？
He began to scrape at his own depths during my mental turmoil. Even looking at his face was getting on my nerves. I slipped past him and left Umeibachido.
待ってください。
待ってください。
不快に思われたらすみません。でも僕は。
いい加減にしていただきたい。
君のためなら何だってしますから。
Was that the kind of line you laid on someone who was purposely trying to get away from you? Justifiably speechless, I couldn't help but stop dead in my tracks.
君のお力になりたいんです。
私の立場にもなってください。知りもしない男からこんな状況でこんなことを言われたらどう思いますか？
どう思いますか？
僕だったら嬉しいですかね。
I mean, his house always have odd taste. Can't blame him there.
あんたは頭がおかしい。
Welcome to the boat. I changed directions, walked towards the main street, leaving Hakase behind. But, well, he wasn't getting the hint. He followed after me.
お願いです。
お願いです。
行かないでください。
行かないでください。I love him! I love him so much! Favorite season! Favorite season!
あんたに何ができるんだ？
何でもできます。
I stopped walking. I left my right foot pointed in the same direction, then turned toward Hasakase-kun. Can't read. He looked somewhat relieved.
何でもですか？
何でもですか? I did he say that? He replied, perking up like a dog. As if to tear the look on his face apart, I spat.
人を殺せと言っても、あなたは叶えてくれますか？
Oh, baby, you don't know what the things he'll do. He will do it, baby!
誰を殺したいんですか？
Ah, I love him so much. I love him so much.
水上という男です。
Eh? Excusez-moi. Excusez-moi. What happened to saving him? What happened? Wait. It seems like I wasn't kept up with the lore. Like, what the fuck happened? Why do we want to kill Minakami again? Did we read the book? Have we read the book? I guess we read the book? Haruhiko-san stood right beside me.
何を考えている玉森くん。
Tamamori-kun. I ignored Haruhiko-san and continued to look at Professor.
その水上くんという方に君は恨みがあるんですか？それは誰でもなく君のためになることですか？
え
え
ならお安いご用ですよ。
My man a little bit crazy. Hakase-kun grinned as if he had found any ray of hope. Is that all? He laughed as he cheerfully twirled his umbrella. I love this man. I love this man. I lowered my eyes again and started to walk ahead.
ちょっと玉森くん。
ちょっとTamamori-kun.
冗談に決まっているでしょう。
冗談ってそんな物騒な。
Usana. You're the one that's dangerous. Valid point, Tamamori-kun. Getting fed up with this conversation, I silently went against the crowd on the main street. Every once in a while, Hakase-kun's hand or words would stop me. Just him being there was making it feel like I was walking through thick bushes. Either way, I weaved through and until I finally came to Suido Bridge. I then threw the umbrella I was holding into Panda River. My umbrella was swept away with the wind and slid into the water's surface. Once the handle was caught in the water, it toppled over and sank. Hakase-kun, unexpectedly speechless, continued to watch my profile. I gave him one last glance, then looked back down at the river. It was engorged, probably from the continuous rain. I felt a somewhat natural appreciation for its shape, which looked like a wriggling snake. I then stood on top of the railing!
玉森くん。
Tamamori-kun! Oh, he's so cute!
何をお考えで。
Hakase-kun gently let go of his umbrella. A passing wind pushed against my back right at that moment. The umbrella Hakase-kun let go of danced high above my head, so even I couldn't help looking up to the rainy sky. He used every ounce of his strength to hold to my waist as I leaned forward.
何をお考えですか？
うるさい。
Urusai! Look at my eyes, bro. You need sleep.
降りてください。
What an unsightly scene this must have been. With my literary sense of aesthetics, this staging had been perfect until the moment I stood on the railing.
離せ離せ。
That's it! Oh, peak comedy. I love it.
話せませんよ。そんなに暴れたら落ちてしまいます。
死なせろ。
People stopped when they heard my yelling, temporarily throwing Suido Bridge into an uproar. But these heartless Tokyoites immediately grew bored and continued to walk on by. Wow. The rain was as cold as snow. I continued to throw my screams that weren't quite sobs or cries towards the sky. Haruhiko-san stood on the same railing, parked himself next to me. He crossed his arms trying to remain calm, but his mouth was trembling.
何を考えている玉森くん。
死んでやるのだ。
I'm sick of your fantasies! I've had enough of your delusions. Oh yeah, so we read the book of Minakami, okay. I thought something was wrong, but I can't be around you anymore. He said those things to me.
生きていけるわけないのだ。
Oh, sad. So in this route, we do like Minakami, no? Oh my god, I'm so sad now for Tamamori. It's okay, we can go rebound on Hakase. I've been abandoned by the guy I thought was my friend. A strange man had settled down in the basement under my peaceful home. Who the hell would I leave behind? Seriously, who? Wasn't it just some hallucination I couldn't suppress and some crazy irregular customer could Could someone process the situation and explain it to me nice and clear?
落ち着きたまえ。カルスピでも飲んで。
この金はサンズの川を渡るに必要なのだ。
え？
玉森くん何を言って。殺してくれ。殺せ。
Gotta say! You don't sound very convincing, baby.
目を覚ましてください。
As soon as he squeezed my waist tightly, I found myself lifting into the air. Ooh! Suddenly, my vision was spun up towards the rainy sky. The landscape slowly tilted. My thoughts were slowly washed away. I could easily imagine the back of my head was most likely going to hit the ground after this. But the reason I couldn't move a single finger must have been my brain deciding that death couldn't be avoided. Professor went backwards, my neck buried in his waist. Numbs and chills tingling intersected as they ran down my spine. He did that attack. Oh my god, I love that. What is it called? Like there's like a meme of this, right? A squeak came flying out of my mouth. Then time began to move. And Hakase-kun's body was lying flat. He immediately scrambled up and smacked my cheeks.
ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。技を決めるつもりは決して。
Meant to be a finishing move.
ああ、玉森くん、死なないでください。
I wasn't going to die even he had been yelling like that. It was just going to be a pain to get up during all this commotion. All I wanted to do was sleep right now. When I closed my eyes, all sound grew distant. The streetcar went by my head, sending massive quakes through the bridge. At this rate, even my life would be riding along with it. I love this. It's going to be another fee, okay? A tail of light was drawn out from the speck as it crawled by. It wrapped around another speck of light and became slightly larger. 2 specks, then 3 specks accumulated more light. Gradually become a vast Milky Way. For some reason, it really made me want to drink Cosby. It was a dream. Oh my god. When my consciousness gently resurfaced, I was in an unfamiliar room. I was tucked neatly in the middle of a large bed. When I looked around with only my eyes, I spotted a dim window. A light rain was drizzling in the blue fog. The rain fell gently as it were trying to go unnoticed. I felt like going back to sleep, so this seemed to be reality. Suddenly, the clear sound of water approached. The source of the sound came into the room without permission, sat next to me, set the glass she was carrying onto the table. Something that seemed to be powdered medicine was mixed into a glass of water, then stirred with a straw, clinking against the glass. She glanced at me, seemed to notice I was awake.
あら、おはようございます。サオモリ様。
玉森です。
Amamori desu.
ご気分はいかがですか？
How was I feeling? What happened after that? Why was I here now? Where was here to begin with? Ah, my mind went all over the place. In any case, how I felt was the least of my problems right now. Sazan-san smiled kindly at me in my confused state, seeming to understand how I felt.
それじゃあ点滴お取り替えいたしますね。
点滴。ああ。
A needle was sticking into the middle of my arm. I immediately pulled it out, and the blood gushing out made me go pale again.
あら、いけませんわ。
Ikemasen wa?
なんで点滴なんか。
I mean, you were dead ass unconscious.
脱水症状が出ておりましたのよ。それより腕を出してください。お手当てしますね。
Sazan-san stuck a tiny piece of paper on my small wound. A small drop of blood rose up, but no more than that spilled out. She gave me a soft smile as I looked at it nervously. Then she remembered the glass she brought with me and handed it to me.
お薬を混ぜておきました。お坊ちゃまの処方した
Obochama.
砂糖のようなお薬です。
How
飲みやす
sweet!
いわ。
ありがとうございます。
Arigatou gozaimasu. I put my nose into the glass and sniffed it first. It smelled like unrefined sake? I brought the glass to my lips and stuck my tongue in it. It was salty. It went down thick in my throat and a lingering tingle. But I gulped the water down in front of her. Perhaps seeing my fervor, Sazan-san's shoulder jumped in surprise.
元気がよろしいこと。早くお坊ちゃまにお知らせしなくちゃ。
She pulled herself up, then left the room while she hummed. I watched the fluttering hem of her clothes until she was gone.
何をぼーっとしている玉森くん。
玉森くん。
まさかあのばあさんに惚れたんじゃないだろうね。
違いますよ。ただちょっと思い出していただけです。
Whenever I was lying on the floor, my grandma out in the country would go all the way to Minakami's house for a cup of water. I remember the Suisenji's family well, being especially deep and cold. For some reason, my grandma's face had come to mind when I drank this water chilled with ice. Suddenly, the ice inside the glass I was holding started to clink. When I looked at the ceiling, I slowly tilted my head at the chandelier. It was an earthquake. That was when the footsteps that seemed to outrun the rumbling started to come closer. He opened and closed the door unexpectedly calm, then came flying towards me. He wrapped his hands around mine and quickly moved away and fell to his hands and knees. He sprang back up onto his feet and looked at me with his anxious as ever face.
玉森くん、昨日は本当にごめんなさい。
This man. He's so cute and chaotic. I love him. That's right, Despite his methods, Hakase-kun had helped me out during my state of confusion. After handing him the glass, I look at my hands.
一応頭の方も検査したのですが、問題ないようで。
問題ないので。
頭は至って正常です。
よかった。傷一つなくて。
Hakase-kun finally smiled at me awkwardly as he put away the IV. But his face gradually darkened and his fence eventually stopped. I could tell he was going to say something. I cocked my eye towards the window to avoid that.
玉森くん、何か悩み事があるんですか？
Well, duh.
ごめんなさい。
ごめんなさい。
でもおこがましいのは承知の上です。
Hakase-kun circled around the bed and jumped to my side. He dropped to his knees looking at me with upturned eyes.
君が悩むのは水上くんという方が原因なのですか？
はい。
君が言ったのですよ。水上という男を殺してくれと。
Our baby would actually do that.
ああ、あれは言葉のあやです。
I put my hand against my head. At the time, I had been desperate to make sense of a complicated situation. Then the conclusion I'd come to was, I was suffering because Minakami was around. No matter how much I tried to think back on it with a cool head, I had no idea what kind of logic I had to use to come up with that answer.
でもその彼が君を困らせているのには間違いないですよね。
はい。
昨日の言葉に嘘はありません。僕は君のためなら何でもします。
Just date him, Tamamori-kun. The me from before was probably would have rejected someone like him, who could be so devoted to a stranger as a creeper. What do you know about me? Why are you so devoted to me? You must have some vile, ulterior motive. But after being on the receiving end of his sincere voice and gaze, how could I push him away so easily? I lowered my head, then looked back at Hakase-kun, pleading with him.
水上を助けてやってほしいんです。
He looked more surprised than I imagined he would, but he gulped and listened to intently again.
水上は今日通り魔によって殺されるんです。私は何度も時を繰り返して奴を救おうとしてきました。でも全て失敗しました。だから博士、私の友達を助けてはくれませんか？
I don't think you would.
私と一緒に奴のことを。
もちろん全身全霊ご協力いたします。
He yelled, interrupting me. I didn't know what he was getting emotional for, but tears were coming to his eyes.
君は友達思いなんですね。そんな君に思われる水上くんもきっと善人に違いありません。
I thought it was tears of jealousy. Hakase-kun clenched his right hand, his intense spirit bursting into flames. I whispered so he wouldn't hear me.
この人結構使えるな。
騙したのかね。
騙すとは人聞きが悪い。私のためになりたいという彼の願いを叶えてやっただけですよ。
Yeah, totally.
しかし意外だね。君の願いが水上くんを助けてほしいとは。
Hi. Minakami had said some harsh things to me, but once I closed my eyes, I could remain calm. Minakami was essential to my everyday life.
少しは冷静になったようだね。
There was a sudden knock at the door. Haruhiko-san immediately turned to dust and vanished. I calmed down and looked at Hakase-kun at the door. Come on in! With Hakase-kun's permission, Sazan peeked her face in. She broke in a happy smile after looking back and forth between me and Hakase.
朝食の準備が整いました。
The music, honestly. In the middle of the dining room she had led us to was a long table that could seat 8 people. Hakase-kun and I sat facing each other from opposite ends of the table. I was the only one feeling unusually awkward in the situation. It was during the time that we had a nice long chat, an hour passing with the sounds of our meal.
つまり水上くんは君の忠告を聞き入れなかったために殺されてしまったと。
そういうことです。
そういうことです。
しかしいきなり殺されると言われても信じられないのは無理ありませんよね。
Hakase-kun nervously poked at the eyes of the fish. He quietly began to speak with his gaze still lower.
君ならどう思われますか？いきなり明日殺されるなんて忠告されたら。
私なら信じます。
信じます。
随分と。
私は分子たる順応性というものを人一倍持っていますから。
More like you got super excited about it.
でも水上くんは一般人です。
I knew that. He read more books than me. He watched more movies than me. But he never picked up the pen and came up with any of his own fantasies. My advice may have been meaningless to someone like him, who had never considered those things
水
before.
上くんに危機感が足りないのは直接的な恐怖がないからでは。
Direct experience with fear. I repeated him before I knew it. I was poking at the eyes of my fish like Hakase-kun.
何らかの方法で水上くんに恐怖を味わわせ、彼が君に当てを求めるよう仕向けるというのはいかがでしょう。
What a roundabout way.
面倒くさくありませんか？
I know, right? I asked timidly.
水上を助けるためなら問答無用であいつを拉致したって。
そうすれば通り魔から水上くんをやすやすと救うことができます。けどそれでは君と彼の信頼関係が築けないでしょ。
I guess he could thinking like a freaking BL murderer yandere guy. Love it.
何よりそうしてこなかった君が一番わかってるんじゃないですか。
I was looking at Professor and I eventually averted my eyes. Being read like a book didn't feel all that great. Hakase-kun suddenly jumped out of his chair. He climbed on top of the table, his eyes sparkling with unusual vigor.
僕にいい計画があるんです。
Alright.
計画？とりあえず座ってください。
座ってください。
はい。
Hi. Would you please like to hear my idea? He smiled, rubbing his hands together. I, on the other hand, crossed my arms. As I made eye contact with Haruhiko-san, who was sitting beside me.
聞いてあげたらいいんじゃないかい。彼を信頼するかしないか以前に、君が水上くんを助けたいのなら。
There had to be something I could do. There had to be a way to save Minakami. But the reason I couldn't shake this anxiety was precisely because I implicitly understood there was still something I could do. I looked back at Hakase-kun and nodded gravely.
詳しくお聞かせ願えますか？
Hakase-kun's story. Cool. I thought he was this kind of soggy guy, but that wasn't the case. At times he had an almost unpleasant heat. When Hakase-kun was like this, he seemed like a very human person, like the time between the rainy season and the beginning of summer. If I were to use the same season and analogy, I was a man who was more like a time between a prolonged chilly spring and the rainy season. It made perfect sense that he'd grown more lively as I drowned in my sorrows. For the moment, I think I'll just summarize the plan Hakase-kun explained to me. His proposition wasn't anything so over the top that it needed to be called a plan to begin with, after all. So now I was standing in front of Oizumi residence. I had been pressing the doorbell for about 30 seconds. Madam showed up while fixing her hair. Realizing I was her visitor, she let out a groan mixed with a sigh.
タマさんじゃないの。朝っぱらから何用かしら。
Madam has one of the best voice actor in the freaking game, honestly.
水上に用がありまして。
皆さん？皆さんならまだ起きてるんじゃないかしら。
I had never seen Minakami sleeping, even when I was boarding here. There had always been a dim light leaking out from his room. He had probably been reading manuscripts until morning like that today too.
お邪魔します。
お邪魔します。
ああ、もう上がらないでちょうだい。呼んできますからここで待ってなさい。
Hi. Madam said before closing the door. After watching her leave through the frosted glass, I headed to the garden. Even I thought it was shameless, but I couldn't help distrusting her. There was a possibility that the madam I hated so much had said she was going to get Minakami, but was going to back to sleep instead. When I tried standing under the eaves, Madam was just about to put her hand against the door to Minakami's door. As soon as Madam opened the shoji, I could see Minakami's profile facing his desk. She shook his shoulder until he finally came to his senses. Minakami kept bowing his head way more than necessary as he stayed prim and proper. I guess if he didn't do all that, he would have been able to get on Madam's good side. As soon as he lifted his face, Minakami noticed me standing in the garden. Madam's mouth opened in shock, and she came walking towards me with awfully pronounced steps.
ちょっとタマさん。
昨日のことを謝りに来た。
I spoke past Madam to Minakami. She looked back and forth between Minakami and I, and quickly withdrew. Minakami bowed his head slightly towards Madam's back again as she left. He swiftly stood and walked up to me.
別に玉森が謝る必要は。
一晩考えて私が悪いと思ったまでだ。昨日はどうかしていた。
そんなことは。もう昨日の話はやめよ
う。Minakami cut off the rest of my sentence, setting the matter aside.
この後時間あるか？
あるよ。
あるよ。
散歩に付き合ってほしいのだ。
A smile came to Minakami's lips as he kept them shut tight. Oh, my heart. He muttered a quiet, okay, then closed the glass door. It seemed like he couldn't find an excuse to turn me down in the end. We walked down the Hakusan street with the usual distance between us. Perhaps because it was the time people were commuting to work, there were several umbrellas in gloomy colors spinning all around us.
また夜通し起きていたのか？いつ眠っているんだか。
講義の合間に少しずつな。
Lies! You didn't go to school! Minakami worried by the stares around him as he smiled a stupid smile. Even without turning around, I could tell he was constantly concerned with what was behind us.
どうかしたか？
いや。
Ooh, he opened his eyes. Minakami tipped his umbrella low. I looked behind us in his place and saw a woman in black following us like a grim reaper. Minakami walked without speaking. I grabbed his arm and pulled him back suddenly.
足元を見ろ。犬のクソだ。
犬のクソだ。It was losing its shape in the rain. Even now, it was close to turning to the dirt. It still stank. So if Minakami were to step in its geta and bare feet, Madam would most likely not let him in the house.
私のおかげで命拾いしたな。
ありがとう。
ありがとう。He started walking again, stepping around the shit.
お前はいつもぼーっとしているよな。
そうかな。
そうかな。
田舎にいた時もそうだったろう。
If there was a book in his hand, he'll be reading it. Even if there wasn't, he'll be looking up at the sky. I don't really question up until now. The conclusion I came up was he was strange because he was Minakami, and he was Minakami because he was strange. But I thought he never saw what was around him. Only today were those squinty eyes and concern about what was behind him.
だからどうした？
どうした？
つけられている気がする。
Perceptive.
駅に用があるんだろ？
Minakami seemed like he wanted to tell me I was wrong, but he fell silent. Afterwards, he only gave me a half-hearted response whenever I spoke to him. He was normally pretty spacey, but there was nothing compared to how he was acting today. When we arrived, Minakami stopped in the middle of a pseudo bridge.
Minakami?
Minakami?
休養を思い出した。
Minakami said quickly before turning around. I immediately grabbed his arm and stopped him on the spot.
想像しいやつだな。わかりやすい嘘をつくな。このままカフェでも行くか。コーヒーを飲めば眠気なんて吹っ飛ぶぞ。
Minakami gave a wry smile to my silly proposition. He didn't even try to run away this time, even when I let go of his arm. but I was the one who was actually hesitant. I wanted to avoid going near Seaweed Bridge as much as possible. I know Minakami would die here today. Minakami turned around slightly, and then backed up towards me as if to protect me.
みなかみ
Minakami? The woman in black was coming towards us. Her face was hidden behind the edge of umbrella, but she was emitting an alarming thirst for blood. Minakami and I focused our eyes on the silver gleam in her hand.
逃げよ
Nigeo!
え
Minakami grabbed my stiff arm and suddenly began to run. I couldn't help letting go of my umbrella, but at that extremely abrupt shift, I picked up the wind. It flew high above in the sky. Still holding to my arm, Minakami pulled me under his umbrella.
あの女は一体
私だって知るか
Shiruka! The woman in black came after us even faster with her unrelenting rage and bloodlust. Even Minakami was normally oblivious to his surroundings, was sharp as a knife. He ran down Hakusan Street even farther south. In actuality, all of this was part of Hakase-kun's plan. Obviously, that's one of his main. From that dog shit earlier to this woman in black, everything was nothing more than a prop Hakase-kun had arranged. And this was where the plan had really started. This time, I was the one who grabbed Minakami's arm and turned into a narrow alley off the main street. I stopped in the middle of the alley and glared at the woman in black chasing after us.
先に逃げろ
I stopped firmly on spot like a shell cartridge watching a bullet being shot. The woman in black also froze on the spot, kept a sad distance between us. The woman in black, Ake Hitotsuruya-san, lifted the edge of her umbrella and looked at me. This stare down was our signal to each other. The goal of this outrageous plan, was to destroy Minakami's peaceful complacency and kickstart his survival instincts. The true goal was to make Minakami run on his own like this, and make him feel like a sense of danger coursing through his skin. It was probably pretty convoluted. Even I thought so. But Minakami was the kind of man who wouldn't even notice if his ass was on fire if he was focused on something. Warning should be as loud and dramatic as possible.
で、何を突っ立っている
逃げる必要はないよ
Eh? He said as he pushed his umbrella on me, approaching the woman in black on his own. I couldn't figure out his expression. Hitotsuruki-san's watchful eye widened in surprise. She seemed overwhelmed. She then slowly retreated and dropped the knife in her right hand to the ground.
玉森様、やめにいたしましょう。
Eh?
え
Wasn't she absolutely forbidden from saying my name?
どういうことだ
いやこれには訳があってだな
Surprisingly, Minakami was smiling when he turned around. He must have realized this was a continuation from yesterday.
そんなことだろうと思ったよ
Eh?
俺を脅かすつもりだったんだろ
驚かしではないこれはれっきとした注意喚起だ
わざわざこの方に頼んだのか
ご好意だ
I received an admonishing stare, which eventually released tension in my body. Then my anger from before slowly began to spread.
すべて話したのだお前が私の忠告を無視したことも今日殺されることも全部な
全部だ
信じてもらえたか
だからこんな泥臭いことができているのだろう信じてくれないのはお前だけだ
Minakami picked up the muddy dirt-stained knife. Terrified of his behavior, I hesitantly approached him.
俺は通り魔に殺されると言ったよなでもそれは違うよ
Chigayo. He killed himself? No, I'm not ready to see the scene again. Come on.
違うって何が違うんだよ
It was me.
間違ってるのはお前の方だ
玉森
Oh, Mina. I can't go to this turmoil again. Oh my god, the VA, like... Mina. The sigh, the, like, deep sigh that he... My heart, I can't.
私の言うことを聞け黙ってはいはい聞いてりゃいいのだそうしたらお前は
You won't die.
無意味だよ
Mina, why you do this to me? Why you do this to me?
これは俺が決めたことだから
He shook off some of the mud and stabbed his neck. No! Hitatsune-san, what are you doing? I tossed the umbrella, everything to the side. Clumsily grabbed his right arm.
どうしたんだよ。なんでこんなことを。
俺を諦めてくれ。
嫌だよ。
やだよ. Before I could follow it, Minakami switched the knife to his left hand. Bright blood came gushing from his neck. He collapsed at my feet. His red umbrella came rolling towards him as they were nestling against his body. I looked down at the scene, saw my own blank face reflecting in the spreading red surface.
玉森くん。
Hakase-kun came up behind me. He had been hiding in the shadows of this alley earlier, so he must have seen the whole thing. After swallowing down his words a few times, he spoke as if there was no one answer.
これは。
I knew, but I couldn't admit it. I didn't want to admit it. It was a suicide. It was a suicide. Everyone said it. It was a suicide. It was a suicide. My tears flowed for the first time, because my brain and my eyes had finally understood it was a suicide. I shed tears for the vanity I couldn't rid myself of it. Suddenly the strings holding me up were severed, and I fell to my knees into the mud.
博士も私が気狂いだとお思いでしょう。
I wanted him to laugh at me, to tell me it was ridiculous, to tell me it was absurd, that even though I knew it was a suicide, I had done all this because I didn't want to admit my self-esteem had been injured, that I wasn't crying like this over Minakami. Anyone would do, and I wanted someone to laugh at my insanity.
時間を戻しましょう。
Hakase-kun.
水上くんにはまだ聞きたいことが。こいつはもう私の友人などではない。
Minakami never said goodbye. He never said anything to me this entire time. About his pain, about his suffering, that he was so fed up with reality that he even killed himself. Even though I should have been the one closest to him, even though I should have been right by his side, what exactly was I to Minakami? Not speaking, Hakase-kun walked up and tilted his umbrella towards me.
僕には友達がいません。けど、たった一人の親友がいます。
Oh, you have such a shitty friend! Let me tell you about that, Hakase-kun! I still hold grudge on season 3. Oh my god.
僕は彼と怪奇幻想を語らうのが楽しみで、彼と何を話そうか夜も眠れないことがありました。大好きなんだと思います。でも僕は彼に嘘をついている。
Where? It was as though I could feel the depths of his sin coming from his hushed voice.
その嘘を明かしてしまったら関係が壊れてしまう気がして怖いのです。
怖いのです。Why though? What lie?
それは本当の親友などではない。何でも言い合えるのが親友なんじゃありませんか。
Yeah, I mean, he's a shitty friend, Hakase-kun. So, fuck him. Leave him. Leave him. I hate him.
そうだと思います。少なくとも彼もそう思っているから僕に全てを打ち明けてくれたんだと思います。あんたもその親友を花沢を裏切ってるんですね。
I stood up shakily and looked back at Hakase-kun. His eyes were trembling slightly, but he didn't try to run away from me.
僕には水上くんの気持ちがわかるんです。私には何も理解できない。正直でいられない人は皆悪なのですか。当たり前だ。
当たり前だ。
死にたきゃ死ねばいい。水上くんを助けないおつもりですか。
Go fuck himself.
あんただって見ただろ。自殺なんかじゃ。
Hakase-kun gave me a look of compassion. Oh, he's so sweet. He's the only one who believes in us. I love him. Oh, he's such a refresher.
自殺なんかじゃありません。
ありません。What was this then?
どうか分かってあげてください。死ぬより恐ろしい現実が彼の中にあったこと。
That he's gay. Oh.
黙れ。
黙れ。Hakase-kun grabbed my arm when I tried to leave. and snap at him to let me go. That's it. But he wouldn't. His face was still full of grief.
君が時を戻さないというのなら僕が戻します。
Oh? Hakase-kun put his hand against the eye patch on his right eye. It slowly slid to his left ear, untying the strings around it.
これが僕の嘘です。
All this time? All this time he had the power? He did told us in Hanazawa's route that he used to have the power. Not that he still owned the power. That's why he switched his eye. So it wasn't because he gave out his eye for his maid. He switched out one of his eye for the maid's eye. Oh my god. What? What? Wow, Hashihime always give you the best plot twist. What? Oh my god. Oh my god. I'm so excited. Hakase's right eye was blue. Clear like the bottom of a shallow water.
僕も愛されていたんです。吾妻橋の橋姫に。
Oh, he's so handsome. Look at him. Oh god.
橋姫
In my confusion, Hakase-kun shoved his umbrella towards me. When I took it, totally perplexed, he suddenly scooped me up in his arms. Hakase-kun, I didn't know you were this strong. This was definitely how the world must have looked to a man close to 6 feet tall. I could clearly look over this disaster. Or not.
もう下ろしてください。
今の君は気をやられています。だからこの僕が客観的な答えをお教えします。
Hakase-kun said as he approached a puddle by the roadside. I was going to struggle to tell him to stop, but in the end he was the only one I had left to cling to. But that was when a faint yet firm voice drowned out all sound. Oh no. Yeah, you left the world. Oh no, poor maids. She fell on the spot. Rain soaked her black clothes, making them even darker. Soaking wet, she had no longer had the strength to stand. Her eyes was wide, as she continued to look up at Hakase-kun pleading.
今までありがとう、一剣。水上くんをよろしく頼むよ。
Oh, that's sad.
はあ、待ってください、博士。
Oh, Hakase. This wasn't how it should end. Both Hakase-kun and Hitotsurugi-san should have known what this farewell meant. Hakase-kun smiled at me calmly when my words got caught in my throat.
やり直しましょうか。
So great. Oh, he's so sweet. Unlike all the bitches before this, Hakase was like, no, you're not. You are right. I will help you fix this. Let's go back. I will do anything for you. He's so great. I love him. He's such a refresher from last season. Oh my god. I love him. I love him so much.
やり直すって。
He's so sweet. He's so fucking sweet. I love him. Let's hope he doesn't bail out on us like the others. I was not only on a streetcar. I was the only passenger. Or so I hope, but unfortunately it was packed. There was no one to talk to in this closed, humid space. What if the streetcar became a time machine and we suddenly traveled through time to the future? I doubted anyone would bring up that strange phenomenon. Oh look, different outside. When are we going to move? Where's the conductor? Whatever, I thought to myself. My eyes must have been closed. They were indifferent. Everyone's just absorbed in their own conversation. 4. Okay. Cold wind blew by. It had just begun to rain. I wasn't sure why, but I was lying down in front of Omaibetito. No, I knew why.
何考えてるんですか。
Hakase-kun had fallen on top of me. He lifted himself up, a wry smile came to his face. He looked around again. The ground that should have been muddy was dry, but most importantly, he wasn't there. Hakase-kun immediately stopped laughing and muttered to himself.
僕たちは一体いつの時代に？
Oh, he lost his powers! Alright, everybody lost his powers, right? They need to take it from their old past self, right? I forgot about that.
昨日の世界です。
昨日たったの1日。
あなたはこの現象が何なのか知っていたんですね。
Not time travel or time slip. Professor had definitely called it Hashihime, but had no intention of being seized by that name now. I stood up on my own and held up in the umbrella he dropped.
あなたは私以上の気狂いだ。だっておかしいでしょ。どうして当たり前に時を戻そうなんて言えるんですか。
More like if he can't go back in time, why didn't he just finish his own, the thing he wanted to do himself? No? I don't know. I don't understand. Okay. When I saw Hitosuri's face, I finally understood. Traveling through time was the same as dying. Even though he knew that, Hakase could still throw his life away for my sake. He didn't know me at all. I wasn't worth the life he was wasting.
これは僕の勝手な行動です。何があっても君が責任を感じる必要はありません。
He's such an ikemen too. Like, oh, my heart.
それに僕のためでもあるんです。
Huh? For you? I repeated, amazed.
あなたと水上に何のつながりがあると言うんですか。
友達を思う気持ちを無駄にしたくないんです。それが誰のものであれ。
Ooh. He whispered wistfully, then grabbed both of my hands.
だから玉森くん、水上くんを救う手立てを一緒に考えてくれませんか。
Oh, he's so sweet.
博士。
Hakase. At some point, he had switched protagonists. Hakase-kun had no intention of hating Minakami, no matter what kind of person he was. He was mistaking my feelings about wanting to save Minakami for friendship and getting all excited on his own. In the end, I couldn't refuse him outright, and I nodded a bit as I looked him in the eye. Relieved by that, he grinned.
そうと決まれば水上くんから真意を聞き出しましょう。僕には彼が何か隠しているように思えるのです。同族の勘と言いますか。
So does Hakase-kun already know that he's gay? Or the two of us were similar, yet not? I wasn't sure what we were in agreement about, but I couldn't deny it either. Hakase-kun suddenly came back to his senses and immediately let go of my hand. With his head down and his eyes wandering, he muttered,
ですが水上くんに会う前に会っておかなければならない人がいます。
which is his past self? Right? Like, hi, bitch. Two men couldn't fit under one umbrella, so we ended up walking down the alley with both our shoulders getting wet. When we arrived at Umebachi, though, Hakase-kun opened the door in on his own. Rather than doing this because I had to, it was more like I was losing my ability to make sound decisions. I gulped as I watched him looking even more confident.
どうしても入らなきゃダメですか。
Although he had nothing to do with Minakami's death, the grotesque man lived in the basement. I want to avoid going out of my way to walk over his head and end up waking
こ
him.
こでもう一人の君を待つ必要がありますから。
The other me?
先日庭で倒れていたという君に会った時、僕には君の瞳が黒く見えました。
So he saw me. Oh, interesting. So he already knew. Oh, wow, Hakase is like such a deep character. I love him. Of course my eyes would be black. I continued to furrow my brows.
橋姫は水底に住むあやかしだと伝えられています。水底から現世を覗く際、橋姫は目をかけた者の瞳を借りる。そのため宿主の目が青く澄んで見えるのです。
Interesting.
梅鉢堂でもう一人の君に会った時、僕には君の瞳が青く澄んで見えました。
So he never
そ
went
して
back.
君が君に触れた後、
Interesting.
今度は君の瞳が青く灯った。
I wonder if Hakase never went back to the past. He just knew, but he never did it.
橋姫は過去の宿主を優先するということです。
Now that he mentioned it, Hakase's right eye was black, like any other normal person. He had definitely been shining blue before we jumped into the puddle. I was about to stare into his eye, then immediately snap out of it. I crossed my arms and stepped into the shop, trying to put up a brave front. At any rate, I now understood this supernatural phenomenon that couldn't be explained with science. It was the work of some kind of spirit. I wasn't in the habit of looking into the mirror, so I wasn't sure how long my eyes had been blue. But I had no intention of pursuing the matter right now. I couldn't even understand Hakase's state of mind, so there's no way I'll be able to understand the mind of a spirit. Therefore, I used this power to the fullest. I felt like I was heading a new direction. A direction different from Hakase-kun's enthusiasm. I sat at the register like usual, watching Hakase-kun with my chin resting in my hand.
あなたはそのうち後悔しますよ。私に関わったことに。
後悔なんてしませんよ。不謹慎かもしれませんが、実は今すごく興奮しているんです。
Cutie!
見りゃわかります。
Hakase-kun laughed again, embarrassed. He must have realized himself that he had lost something though. It seemed like as long as he was with me, that void in his heart was filled. My impression of him being an eccentric weirdo would probably never change.
それにしても君は遅いですね。
Restless, Hakase-kun hid behind a bookshelf. I followed him with my eyes as I let out a short sigh. Even I thought it was odd I was taking so long to come back. Without saying anything to Hakase-kun, I went upstairs to my room. I looked at the dingy fishbowl, then saw the cloudy weather. I didn't seem to be coming back. Even though it was a familiar sky, it felt like I was looking at this scene for the very first time.
玉森くん、
Hakase-kun timidly picked his face in. After I take a quick look around the room, his face started to gradually turn red. Cutie!
ここってまさか。
Masaka.
私の部屋です。
うわ
So, Hakase-kun teetered forward and wandered around the room. I ignored him and went back to looking for me outside.
5番カルスピの包装紙書き損じの原稿。
He's such a freak. So what? My sigh fogged up the glass. I was trying to search for myself, but ended up following Hakase-kun's movement reflected in the window. Eventually, he fell gently to his knees and held onto the fishbowl.
君は金魚を飼っているのですね。
When he peeked into the fishbowl, the goldfish eyes were reflecting my image.
変な目でしょう。一日中上を向いているんですよ。
これは頂点眼という詩です。いい趣味をお持ちで。
Oh,
ご存知ありませんか？
he said as he covered the top of the fishbowl with his hands. He made a small gap between his hands and a tiny ray of light shone into the bowl.
デメキンを暗い水瓶に閉じ込めて光を一点から垂らすんです。何十年何百年と代を重ねるうち、瞳は光を求めて上を向いていったそうです。
That's interesting. It was a disabled goldfish. Oh god, so rude.
一途だと思いませんか？頂点眼は僕の大好きな金魚です。
Daisuki. Our opinions were divided on that too. Come to think of it, this goldfish was kind of similar to Hakase-kun's watering cans. Well, I guess they were all like that once they were flattened out. Putting that aside, I wonder when I was coming home. Me aside, even Minakami didn't seem to be coming. The only thing coming more was rain.
外に出てきます。
I had a really bad feeling. Oh. I rushed out to own my Bajito and went down the usual alley to get to Hakusan Street. But I saw no silhouette anywhere around. My heart raced faster and faster. Suddenly I stopped in my tracks in the middle of the alley. Right under my eyes were clothes that were awfully similar color. Hakase-kun jumped towards them, lifted up a navy sleeve and looked at it.
これは玉森くんの服では。
Eh? It wasn't just my navy top. It was my short-sleeved dress shirt. All my clothes from my hakama to my underwear. Those were undoubtedly my fake glasses as well. What did this mean? The bookshop owner! Did it touch me? The bookshop? Like, me in my old self? Like, Tamamori, older Tamamori? I was certain this was the world from one day ago. But I hadn't shown up when I should have. It was like when I touched myself and turned to water. No way. I stared closely. While Hakase-kun was surprisingly calm.
君以外にこの時間に跳躍している君がいると考えられませんか？これは明らかに君が君に触れた後です。
え、私が重複しているということですか？
I'm multiplying.
その可能性があります。
Eh? Wasn't that way too complicated?
だが過去に私がそんなことをした覚えはない。
また別の平行世界からやってきた君がこの世界に干渉している可能性もあります。時間は一方に流れるのが常です。
要は敬意があってこそ結果があるということ。ですが君と僕に宿る橋姫はその慣例を乱すことができる。
Well, we should get you then, Hakase-kun.
じゃあ私は一体どこに？
それは君にしかわかりません。
They were also me after all. That being the case, I grabbed Hakase-kun's arm and told me, I have an idea, and started to run. Yeah, touch yourself. Not that way. When we rushed into Toyo Cinema, it was completely empty. My heavy breathing echoed through the lobby. Not thinking, what would I do? I came here to find the other me, but Hakase-kun who came chasing after me collapsed into a chair with a sigh that was more like a groan.
君は椅子ですか？
As soon as I put my hand against the door of the theater, a face popped out from behind the counter.
お兄さんたちはお客さん？
Okyak-san?
おかっぱ頭の糸目の男をここへ呼んできてくれないか？
He came right up to me and held out the palm of his right hand.
はい。じゃあ30銭。中を探してほしいなら合同代をくれないと。
行動代。
Hakase-kun slowly came up beside me and stood there
たっ
dumbfounded.
た30銭でいいのかい？君はいい子だね。
Ikko-da-ne? As he tried to catch his breath, he pulled out 30 cents from his wallet. He pat the small head after he made him take it.
おうよ、俺に任せて。
He went to the other with his eyes sparkling. But the door opened less than 10 seconds later, he came back out.
そんな男の人いないっすけど。
もう一度よく探してこい。
そもそも見覚えもないし、今日は来てないと思いますよ。
Minakami should have come to Umebachito, lied about having classes at the Imperial University, and headed to Toyo Cinema. Why hadn't he come to Umebachito? Or even stopped by Toyo Cinema? I was acting calm even as my heart pounded and I broke out in cold sweat. That's it, I spat out as I left Toyo Cinema. I muttered, so only Hakase-kun who was coming after me could hear me.
ここまでにしませんか。
When I turned around, his eyes were wide open like I knew they would be. I wanted to get away from everything, before those eyes blurred with sadness.
もう一人の私も水上を助けるつもりでいるのでしょう。それを私が追えばまたややこしく。
そうとは限らないと思います。
なぜですか？
先ほど僕は別の君がこの世界に干渉していると言いました。つまり少なくとも君が3人いたというわけです。
Yeah, but now there's only 2 of me, right?
ですが2人目の君、つまり今水上くんと共にいるであろう君が最初の世界から存在していたら。
ごめんなさい。頭がついていけません。
Me too.
2人目の君の目的を考えましょう。
Okay. There were 3 of me, yes. Why was the me that could travel through time like I could continuing to hide from me? Why was he making his move now? Why was he able to get the upper hand on me? The more I thought about it, the more something eerie crept into my mind.
私に消されるんでしょうか。
僕がさせません。
What obligation do you have to say all that to someone like me? I was going to grill him about that, then I realized I was just venting. I ended up giving Hakase-kun a wry smile instead.
ここまでにするというつもりはありませんが、今は君の動向を少し見守ってみましょうか。
Hakase-kun, shouldn't you take back your power though?
水上くんが助かればそれでよしですし、助からなくとも僕の橋目で時を戻せばいい話です。
Yeah.
でもそれじゃあまたサザンさんと一剣さんを置いていくことに。
きっと理解してくれるはずです。
I remember Hitosuruka-san's face as he watched Hakase-kun leave. He must have seen her tear-stained face that was far from understanding too. Or maybe not. What was I getting all heartbroken over anyway? The relief I felt from what he said was actually increasing. What was my goal? To go back to my everyday life, right? I tug at Professor's conscience and go back to the world I wanted. I could never consider this man my friend. No matter how much he flattered me, no matter how he smiled at me, this man was my slave. Don't worry. I didn't expect that line. I nodded at what he had said earlier. Afterwards, we flagged down a taxi from Hakusan Street and went back to Hikawa's estate. We used the tiny doorbell that matched the huge mansion to call for the maids inside. The woman that appeared in front of the gate looked at Hakase-kun's face and her reflection suddenly tensing and going dark. She threw her umbrella aside and ran up to us, threw open the doors with eager hands. She then wrapped her hands around Hakase-kun's chilled cheeks.
坊ちゃま、眼帯は。
Botchama!
紐が切れてしまってね。
Hitasuri-san must have figured out that Hakase-kun wasn't her Hakase. She turned her piercing gaze towards me.
玉森くん、君はここで待っていてください。僕は野暮用を済ませてきます。一剣、車を回しておくれ。悪いけど、運転も任せていいかな。
直ちに。
She lifted the hem of her dress and ran through the rain. I watched her back as she left with the same look I had given Hakase-kun. I couldn't let myself feel guilty. I kept telling myself that. I noticed that Hakase-kun's gaze had suddenly turned to me.
君に渡したいものがあるんです。ですから、僕が帰るまで、どこにも行かないでくださいね。
金魚上路ですか？
ええ。新しいものを君に、と。
You sure love those watering cans.
一回り、いや、二回り大きくて、ちょっと置き場に困るかもしれませんが、一番可愛く作れたものなんです。
Wow.
ご迷惑ですかね。
Two size bigger. The cutest one, specifically.
待ってます。
待ってます. Hakase smiled wider than ever at my mumbling. I quickly turned my face away.
中で待っていますから。
はい。
はい。
早く帰れるようにします。
Hakase-kun's black car came right at that moment. He folded himself up into the back seat. The last thing he did was show me his usual smile, and then he left. Rich and capable, the black car glided west like a boat being swept away on a river. I couldn't ignore that Hakase-kun had fallen headfirst into the car that moved when we parted.
博士、無理してらっしゃいますよね。
He's sick, right? His guide and speech were exceedingly steady. But what exactly did the grief I could occasionally saw in his face mean? Was that smile from earlier just a front? Well, it had nothing to do with me. With nowhere else to go, I started to walk towards Hikawa's residence. I came inside and the sound of the rain suddenly stopped when I closed the door. The moment I let out a sigh that had been building up inside me, I heard a snap of rice cracker being split in half. And noticing a shadow, I looked to my side and saw Sazan-san close to the window. Once she noticed me, she stuffed the cracker into her mouth. She brushed off her hands and came up to me as the hem of her dress fluttered.
お初にお目にかかります。私、氷川家女中のサザンと申します。以後お見知りおきを。
はじめまして。
はじめまして。
はい。
はい。She silently showered me with smiles. I unintentionally lowered my head at her bright, gentle face.
博士には玉森と呼ばれています。
玉森様。
玉森さ
ん。なんて可愛らしいお名前。
She danced around me, flittering about like a butterfly. Her gaze cheerfully made its way from my feet to my head. After her brief appraisal was over, she stood in front of me and smiled once again.
お坊ちゃまとはどこでお知り合いに？
カクカクしかじかありまして、一応には。
Why does she laugh like that? What was she so happy about? She was presently a cheerful woman. I tried coughing to hold back a laugh. The next moment, I had already broken into a smile.
それにしては随分と楽しそうに歓談してらっしゃいましたね。もしかしてもしかしますとお坊ちゃまのお友達でいらっしゃいますか？
おそらくそんなところです。
Sazan puffed out her chest as far as it could go, then abruptly turned on her heel.
ちょっと。
ちょっと。
お赤飯を炊かなくちゃ。
赤飯? She sang an unfamiliar song as she vanished into another room. Put down the arm I was about to extend and crossed my thumb aimlessly. Even more bored now, I sat down on the sofa by the window. Suddenly, Haruhiko-san was sitting on the sofa across from me. He was sipping politely on some tea as if trying to knock over the tea stalk.
氷川くんの生活はオラたちには想像もつかないね。
I know, right? He had two maids in this massive estate. Hakase could probably get his hands on everything he wanted, and seemed to be surrounded by luxuries. At first glance, everything seemed to be going his way, but
影が見えるんです。
影？
I didn't have some sort of sixth sense, of course. Come to think of it, I could sense a shadow surrounding Hakase-kun ever since the first time we met. The wind shook the tree in the garden. was pretty sure someone had told me it was a cherry blossom tree. Right now it's changing into summer leaves, but it was probably already dreaming of the beginning of spring. Suddenly I saw a shadow figure reflected in the window. When I turned around, practically jumping back, Sasan-san was standing right behind me.
立派な桜でございましょう。私が初めてこの邸宅にやってきた時、それは真っ白な絨毯を敷いてくださったのよ。
Dead body, you mean?
真っ白な。
ええ、真っ白な花びらが舞っていたの。あら、梅だったかしら。松、竹。
何をですか？
She giggled as she plopped down on the sofa across from me. Hakase swiftly moved away from her backside and sat cross-legged by her feet. Sasan-san shrugged her shoulder mischievously and gave me a bashful smile. Her behavior was making me blush too.
お掃除が終わって、今からお姉様とお茶するところでしたの。代わりに付き合ってくださいませんか？
She offered me some black tea. Even the handle of the white porcelain cup was hot. So this was a matter of whether I could drink it or not. It was a matter of whether I'd touch it or not. I smoothed things over with a polite nod for the time being. Anyway, her skin was too smooth to belong to an old woman. Her finely sculpted nose, the clear contours of her chin and neck, they were all like the cup of a porcelain.
博士から伺ったのですが、氷川家に仕えて60年ってふざけているんですよね。
いいえ、私と姉は20、いえ19、15、14、そう、14の時に奉公に出され。
ですが、その肌は74歳のそれではありません。
あらやだ。
やだ。That was definitely how an old woman would react.
お坊ちゃまは氷川酒造の当主でありながら発明家であり、天才外科医でもあるのです。この体はその賜物。
He's so smart.
多趣味で何よりです。
Tamamori is so interested in him, huh? So they were able to get this beautiful just by tightening their wrinkles, straightening out their spines, huh? The one who came to my mind when I was about a woman in their 70s was my grandmother over in the country. I still remember her bent back, lowered hips, and her constantly hunched over posture. I was able to refine something like that into a figure like this, so I had no choice but to acknowledge Hakase-kun's skill.
怖くなかったんですか？整形って。
必要な痛みもありますことよ。それに私はお坊ちゃまを信頼しておりますから、何も怖くありませんでした。
True.
へ
え素晴らしい。
ご興味がありますの？
少しだけ鼻を高くできないかな。
Tamamori-kun.
あら、そうお低くないと思いますけど。
知り合いになかなかの美男子がいまして、比べられることが多いのです。
Kawasu? I mean, he's hot.
あら、お心察しますわ。お坊ちゃまにお伝えしておきますね。
I don't think Hakase-kun would want you to change, but sure.
やめてください。
やめてください。
冗談です。本当にやめてください。
まだお坊ちゃまがご信頼になれませんか？
Hasan's voice was so sad. Come to think of it, this maid seemed to think of her master as her own child or something. Just his maids. Merely the woman who had looked after him since he was little. That's how she had answered before. But for some reason, there was a part of me that was curious about the rest of the story. But for some reason, there was also a part of me that was curious. What?
60年も仕えているということは、博士のことなら何でもわかりますよね。
もちろんでございます。
いつから博士は一人なんですか？
一人？
Sasan-san repeated vacantly. She then suddenly burst into laughter. Oh no, she giggled.
お坊ちゃまは一人なんかじゃありませんわ。お父様もおじい様もお母様もお坊ちゃまのことを見守っておいでです。それに栗沢様にあなたというお友達もいらっしゃる。輝かしい毎日です。
博士のご両親はどちらに？
木の下です。
Dead. Great. I look at the tree in the garden. When I look back at Sasan-san, she leaned forward a bit and smiled.
でもね、桃森様。
Momomori-sama?
お坊ちゃまは寂しいだなんて漏らしたことはございませんのよ。一剣とサザンがいるから大丈夫と笑ってくださるの。ね、一人ぼっちなんかじゃないでしょ。
変わっていますね。
いいえ、至って普通のファミリーでございます。
Family! They're really were strange. She sipped her black tea, smiling as she leaned back. If there were dead bodies buried underneath a tree, the cherry blossoms would turn red. Finally reached for the tea and put my lips on the cold surface of the liquid.
お坊ちゃまは栗沢様という方に会ってから明るくなったのです。でももっと明るくなったのは1ヶ月前。
It's
愛し
me!
い方と再会できたと嬉しそうに話されるのです。
再会？
再会？
雨の日でなければ会えないとかで週に1段3段いえ30段も降雨弾というのを打ち上げて。
So he's the one who makes it constantly raining? I literally spat out my tea.
降雨弾って何ですか？
ごめんなさい。私、学がありませんから、よくわかりませんの。
Was this unusual rains Hakase story? Speaking of which, who was this person he loved that he was able to meet again? Is it me? Was there someone other than me that could have made him more cheerful a month ago?
もしかして、お坊ちゃまの話していた方って。
I love how self-centered Tamamori was. He was like, me. I mean, obviously it's him, but still funny.
ええ。
So self-centered, I love him.
沙織様
玉森です。
Wow. Tears started to fall down Sasan's cheeks. I automatically bowed and apologized for yelling.
嬉しいのです。
What is she? Eh? Shinan slowly began to talk about Hakase's childhood.
でも、そのお坊ちゃまがこんなに素敵なお友達を。
素敵な友達。
どうか、お坊ちゃまをよろしくお願いいたしますね。
Hi. Why was she entrusting her precious Hakase-kun to a stranger like me? He should have been more to them than their master. I wonder just how much her face would crumble when she would find out I thought of him twice. I love him. My question seemed like it'll come out if I open my mouth, so I fakely hid it behind my cup without agreeing with her. It's so funny. I love him. I love them. Hakase's story. Are all dishonest people bad? Hakase-kun had asked me that. It wasn't limited to him. I had a habit answering everyone's question with contradictory answer, so I must have made him sad. I was an honest person. I was honest and faithful to my desires. But when I really thought back on it, I never considered myself to be a good person either. Same. I was the man who called him my slave, so his self-sacrificing disposition wouldn't wound my own heart. Even I was amazed by how quickly my defense mechanism kicked into gear. As expected from a terrible person, as expected from the permeating and unremovable blackness in my soul. However, when I saw Sazan's eyes, I realized how much I despised that about myself. I need to be reborn, I thought with all my heart. Wow, he waited until night. The sun was setting and the rain clouds were growing even thicker. As soon as my shadow reflected in the window, Hakase-kun came home out of breath.
遅くなってごめんなさい。
Oh, he wore his eye patch again. Hakase-kun had an eye patch over his right eye again. He seemed to figure something out when I fell silent to skepticism.
僕です。野暮用というのはもう一人の僕に会いに行っていたのです。
He said as he lifted his eye patch. There was an eye shining blue from its shadow.
それと帝大へも掛け合ってみたのですが、水上くんという生徒はいないと。
ああ、水上というのはあだ名なんです。
あだ名。花沢くんが梅沢くんであるようなものですか。では本名でもう一度。
心配なさらず、これからは一人で行動しようと思います。
So it breaks our conscience after talking to someone. I lifted myself up from the sofa. Hakase-kun nervously stepped towards me when I grabbed the umbrella leaning against the wall.
いろいろ考えたのですが、やっぱりこれ以上あなたに迷惑かけられません。
迷惑だなんてそんな。
坊ちゃま。
Ochama? Ikasuri-san was pulling on Hakase-kun's sleeve. He calmed down but started to mutter, dejected.
ほとぼりが冷めるまでここにいるべきだと思います。何かあった時は僕が時を。
何かあったらお願いします。本当に何かあった時には。
I passed Hakase-kun and went outside.
玉森くん、どちらへ行かれるつもりですか？
みなかみの下宿先を当たってみます。
せめてお送りさせてください。
お気になさらず。
I left the estate without turning around.
博士とはこれっきりにするおつもりですか？
ああ。
せっかく仲良くなれたのに。
It was because of that. I couldn't steal him away from those admirable maids. The weight of the loss of others felt at losing us to time travel was far too different. There was no one who would be upset if I were to disappear. It was safer for Hakase-kun. I didn't want to make Sazan-san have the same look as her sister.
お待ちになってください
Sazan-san, who managed to get ahead of me, was still smiling cheerfully.
な。私にお送りさせてください。
I awkwardly averted my eyes. Sazan-san giggled and got into the car parked in front of the gate. The automatic door silently opened. Sazan-san was waiting inside with a smile. I won't take the ride. I suddenly closed my umbrella and resigned myself over to her kindness.
どちらに走らせましょう？
小石川の方にお願いします。白山通り沿いの適当なところで降ろしていただけると。
かしこまりました。
Yay! Contrarily to her polite tone of voice, Sazan was handling the steering wheel like a mad woman. Remembering that she wasn't a very good driver, I sat back as far as I could. I opened and shut my mouth several times in the rear view mirror. A worried smile suddenly turned towards me.
何かお困りなのですか？
お気になさらず。
それとも私、何かご機嫌を損ねるようなことを。
そうではありません。あなたが博士を思うなら、私にあまり関わらない方がいい。そもそも私と彼は友人でも何でもありませんから。
では、私また勘違いしてしまったのね。
She smiled helplessly but seemed to get it.
でもね、お坊ちゃまは本当にあなたのことが好きなんだと思います。その気持ちだけはどうか気づいてあげてくださいね。
Don't worry, we are very aware. I almost painfully understood what kind of person Hakase-kun was. He never judged anyone in the least. He knew nothing of distrust for others. Never realizing he was being tricked, his foolishness almost painful for me. He shined bright, way too bright, and he and his mates were good people who didn't suit me. I shut my eyes tight as I wouldn't have seen the light and darkness between me and them. Aww. I mean, they were really nice people, sorta, but yeah. Once we got to Hakusan Street, I got off the car without a word of thanks. It was part of my scheme to make her hate my guts. But Sazan-san immediately went after me and handed me an umbrella.
どうぞこちらをお使いになって。その小さな番傘じゃ雨風にさらわれてしまいますが。
We're finally getting our Eto umbrella.
いえ、でも。
She went back to their car, and I'll smile. I looked up into my umbrella and let out a directional sigh. I backtracked down the road, went down a small path, arrived in the front of Oizumi residence. I found all the way here, yet my finger was unconsciously hesitating to press the doorbell.
大丈夫。水上さんはきっと無事ですよ。
だがこの嫌な予感は何だ。
気のせいです。
That'll be really great if that were the case. But with how strange things had been, I seemed to have developed some gnawing doubts. All I could hope for was that the other me had done his job. I pushed down those thoughts and finally pressed the doorbell. The sound echoed through the Oizumi residence. The door slid open in no time and immediately shrank back.
タマさん、あなた今まで一体どこにいらしてたの？
I thought as she was coming right at me, but she leaned against the door unsteady on her feet. Her brow was trembling, her face pained, her eyes were closed. I felt speechless at this unmentionable scene.
驚かないで。聞いて。2時間前、警察から連絡があったの。皆さんの体が川から上がったと。
He died early.
池田君に連絡して彼に身元確認をお願いしているわ。でもさっきあなたが見つからないと折り返し電話が来て。
川瀬はいえ、池田は今どこに？
玉森君。
Kawase. Oh, it makes it too. I looked to my side when my name was called. Kawase was standing there, confused. He glared at me in annoyance as he approached me like he was going to chase me away. As soon as he had walked right up beside me, he noticed Madam was at the front door. He lifted his hat slightly and bowed to her out of respect.
池田君。
死体は水前寺に間違いありませんでした。
Suisenji.
そう。
Madam covered her face and broke down crying. Kawase put his hat back on and lowered over his condolences in a low
後の
voice.
ことは俺が引き受けます。遺品はなるべく手をつけず、そのままにしておいてください。
He's so sweet. He's so hot. He's It's a. I'm devoted to to Hakase. I nearly said Kawase.
わかりました。
Wakarimashita.
わかり。
また連絡します。今夜のところは。
Madam gave him a voiceless nod and then anxiously closed the door. I saw her shadow through the frosted glass slightly bent over and trembling.
何つったってんの？早く行くよ。
Where were we going? I obediently started to walk behind Kawase, as he were pulling me by some invisible reins. Kawase's face completely changed as he could no longer see the gate of Oizumi residence. He was infinitely more honest person than me. I lifted my lower face to him, licking his tongue.
ありえないよね。ほんと気持ち悪い。
Kimochiwarui.
なんでこんな時期に死ぬのかな。雨の中わざわざ歩かせやがってさ。
He's always been a dick.
そんな言い方ないだろ。
迷惑だと思わない？死ぬならうまく死んでほしいよね。どうせなら東橋から身を投げればいいのに。
If he had me, Nakami's definitely wouldn't have floated back up. No one would have realized he was dead.
ひどいな。
Hidoi na. Kawase stopped in his tracks. He scoffed as he turned to me.
君泣いてるの？
え？
I touched my cheek with the back of my hand. I felt something warm and wet that didn't seem to be the rain.
悲しいんだ。
わからん。
Wakaran.
何それ？
お前が白状だと思って。
This is the first time actually Tamamori is grieving. Like a cry grieving. Before he was in denial, he was escaping. But this one is like, accepting it. Which is really nice. You know what? This is a really nice season.
田上が死んだのにお前。
It wasn't just Kawase. Up until now, even I.
要点が違うでしょ。
Kawase closed the distance between us in an instant. I unconsciously moved back, stopping against a
生
fence.
きてる人間がなんでいちいち死んだ奴に同情しなくちゃならないんだよ。残された奴のことも考えない自己愛者にかけてやる言葉もないね。
And again, Kawase story is so sad. Remembering it, I just that he was groomed, that he was beat up, like my poor baby.
だが私たちは他人じゃない。親友だ。
親友だ。
引き止めることだってできたはずだ。
バカじゃないの。
バカじゃない? Kawase suddenly snatched away my umbrella. He tossed it to the rain, smiling inappropriately. Why, you dick?
これ君の傘じゃないよね。
So what?
あ
あ。
君も氷川とかいう男に会ったんでしょ。友達とか親友とかうさんくさいくくりの宗教にでも入れられちゃったわけ。
I mean, Hakase does like very friends and best friends word oriented.
違う。
違う。
だったらその態度は何？君は俺にへつらっていればいいんだよ。
Eh? If he was saying this wasn't friendship, then what the hell were these relationships? Then as the word escaped me, Kawase burst out laughing.
ねえ玉森くん、君は俺と氷川どっちが好き？
どっちが好き? Don't take me back to season 2. But this is interesting though, right? Because the time where we, went to Kawase's route, we did try to flatter Kawase, right? Because we didn't want to lose another friend. Meanwhile, in this one, we didn't feel the same way. We went with Hakase-kun. And I guess Kawase in this route, because he still liked us, he felt like, a bit... he didn't like it, I guess.
どっちの味方でいてくれる？
お前は博士を勘違いしている。
Sorry!
あの人は少なくともお前より真人間だ。
That's true. He's so green. Tamamori's finally going green, guys. He went red, he went black, and now he's going back to green. Let's go. Let's go.
勘違いしているのは君の方だよ。
Kawase tipped his umbrella towards me. He then came up and lifted me up by the collar without hesitation.
あいつの罪業が知りたいなら、俺の家に来なよ。
Oh my god, though.
罪業?
Saigyo? He pushed me away, dramatically turned his back to me. Once I picked up my own umbrella, I yelled at his back.
待ってくれ。罪って一体なんだよ。
一体なんだよ。
ここじゃ話せない。まあそれを聞いたら、氷川を真人間だなんて二度と思えなくなるだろうね。
Well, he said as he did skip secrets. Oh, I don't wanna. I like Green Hikawa though. Come on, don't ruin it for me.
気が向いたらおいで。
Kawase smiled profoundly. He knew what kind of a guy I was, so it must have been easy for him to get my heart pumping. I began to run. Stepping into the mud, getting my shoes dirty, the wind blowing against my umbrella felt like it would carry it away. Caught up with Kawase and rushed into the crowd on Hakusan Street. Minakami's story. Never once considered myself an honest man. Moreover, I was depraved, immoral, a mess. Even now, as far as I could imagine, I was going to hell after I died. Minakami was a much better man than me. He never once told me to keep him alive. It was like he ended his life with no attachment to this world. Even so, I wanted him to live. I want him to know that there were people who had been sad if he died. This wasn't trickery, this was how I truly felt. I mean, we do like Minakami, I think, right? I think in any route, we initially like Minakami and then we kind of like, go to branches. But I no longer had the strength. I had stopped right in the middle of Suido Bridge. Oddly enough, my breathing immediately calmed, the agony I've been feeling all this time flowing out of my fingers. Kanda Bridge was running as quickly as usual too. I took out my shoe, exposing my feet to the fresh air. My socks were absorbing the cold air, their white fabric stained the color of rain. I closed my umbrella, placed it at my feet, and put my hands against the rail. I gradually shifted my weight forward. Kawase, where the fuck are you? Save me!
やめなさい。
Yaminasai.
玉森くん。
Suddenly, someone tightly grabbed me around my waist. These arms, this warmth, they were definitely familiar. Still silent, he put my feet back on the ground and turned me towards him. He grabbed me firmly by the shoulder and shook me over and over as I asked, "Are you insane?" My mouth hung open. I was speechless, my overflowing words getting caught in my throat.
博士。
Aww, Hakase is so tall. Ooh. Size difference. Oh.
どうしてですか？
How does he know? Hakase-kun quietly loosened his grip. With no outlet, his sentiment quivered through his fingers.
ごめんなさい。つけるような真似をして。でも君が心配で。
Oh, he was following us.
来てくれると思ってました。
Hakase-kun watched me even more closely.
浅草に戻るのが面倒だったからちょっと呼んでみたんです。
ああ。ひどいことをするんですね。
怒りますか？
Okorimasu ka?
いいえ。安心しました。
Following my example, Hakase-kun smiled. But his smile immediately fell and turned back into a frown.
一度だけ無礼を許してくれますか？
Eh? What you gonna do? Hakase-kun withdrew the large umbrella he was holding over me. He held it low, hiding me behind it. Then hugged me tightly. Oh. Oh, Hakase-kun. The rainwater soaked into his dry
博
clothes.
士、
ごめんなさい。
ごめんなさい。
ごめんなさい。もう少しだけ。
Before I probably would have pushed him away. Go away, you're so annoying. Are you insane? I give him a glare that would stab him with all my abuse. But right now, my heart was trembling, almost wanting to hug Hakase's clothes. Truth was, even though I had decided not to get him involved, I was so relieved he found me that I wanted to cry. If I was honest and told him all that, felt like I lose sight of my goal. After all this time, all I could do was pull on his sleeves.
どうやって私を追ってきたんですか？
別の車でこっそりと。
ずいぶん手慣れてるんですね。
それなりにコツもあるんですよ。つかず離れず、息を殺して追いかけるんです。
車の中でも？
はい。
How cunning. I laughed again, amused. When I did, Hakase-kun hugged me just a little tighter in his arms. There wasn't a person in this world who would be so happy to be humiliated. If there were, they'll be bluffing and enduring the lack of compassion. That's why I thought I should also convey my feelings to Hakase-kun in my own way.
私の名前、タマって言うんです。
え？
水森タマ。
Oh, right. They all had nicknames, right? So we're not Tamamori. Our name's just Tama. This is the first time we knew about this, right? Or am I like just don't remember?
変な名前でしょ。玉のように丸い赤ん坊だったから、タマと名付けられたんです。
It's cute.
おかしなことはありませんよ。
だって、猫みたいじゃないですか。
I mean, not wrong.
君らしいと思います。
He wasn't difficult to deal with as that baby that had rolled around everywhere. I've been colically with a very voracious appetite. My grandfather predicted I would eat them out of the house home one day. And that actually ended up being true. That's why I hated saying that name even now.
けど今後も、私のことは、玉森と呼んでください。博士も博士です。
でも、教えてくれてありがとうございます。これで君をもっと知れたような気がします。
He's so sweet. He's so honest. I love this man.
もっとも何も、あなたに隠すことは何もありません。
I slowly pushed him away.
もう一度、手伝ってもらえませんか？今度こそ、水上を救いたいんです。
We're asking Hakase to leave again.
ええ。どこまでも君に尽くしますよ。
Hakase-kun! Hakase had a good heart. He was kind, gentle, docile. That's why I hate him now until now. He was just some hypocrite. But once I found Hakase-kun had a miserable and guilt-ridden past, I was relieved from the bottom of my heart. I felt like I could face him as an equal for the first time. I didn't care what Hakase-kun's sins may have been. The deeper they were, the more he could sink with me. Tama, you're such a red flag. He fall to the ends of the world with me.
そろそろ行きましょうか。
Hakase-kun took my hand. I tightly squeezed the hand that back and gave him one for nod. I was on a streetcar. I was the only passenger, or not. Minakami was behind me. Wait, actually now I'm wondering, because I didn't take back my power, right? My power was like on somebody we didn't know. If I go back through time, would that person in that alternate timeline have the power? Or not? Or now we're just fully just Hakase's power? I don't know.
でだ、結局レジスターの引き出しが開かず、客を一人逃してしまったのだ。
玉森は昔から機械音痴だからな。仕方ないよ。
そういう問題ではない。なんとレジそのものが壊れていたのだよ。
Apparently the register was imported from Hawaii. It was a pretty child's machine with dolphins carved into it. But since it was a piece of junk that wouldn't work no matter what I pushed or pulled, I tried fixing it by going back and forth between banging my hand against it and my own head.
それなら早く修理に出した方がいい。
それがその後に来た客がすごいのだ。細い針金のようなものをねじ込んでな。今でもよくわからんが、 ものの数秒で修理してみせたのだ。
It's Hakase. When Minakami closed his book, its mouth was wide
器
open.
用な人もいたもんだ。
だろう。
だろう。
だが一芸に秀でるものとはどこか変わったところがあるのだな。その男、一切私に目を合わせないのだ。
That being said, he wasn't being antisocial or anything. He bowed his head repeatedly and kept fidgeting with his hands. He just seemed nervous being in front of me.
しかも何か口ごもっているというか、
不思議な客だな。
危機快快だ。
神保町はいろんな気を集めてしまうんだろうな。
変人を？
ああ、俺と玉森みたいだな。
Well, that was understandable. Chimbocho was where books and stories from all around the world and times were collected. Lured in by those stories, or perhaps going with their flow, all kinds of people with all kinds of interests gathered here. It was the one who had no interest in particular that were undoubtedly stuck into its vortex and intoxicated by its atmosphere. A strange store modeled after such a strange town would definitely attract strange people. Or maybe it was the voice... Oops. Or maybe it was the voice of the strange people who had built those strange stores that made this strange town.
不思議なことだらけだ。
ならば不思議な店の不思議な店員として私も品格を持つ必要があるな。あの眼帯男が再び来るかもしれん。私はその時までにさらに怪奇的魅力を身につけなければ。
Well, he ended up being your regular customer.
もう十分だと思うけど。
5. It continued to rain every day after that. At some point, the man with eye patch became a regular customer. Up until recently, he was heir to me, and I paid him no mind. Before we were this close, I was like he was waiting for the future where we could take each other's hand. When blew by and rain drizzled, we had fallen down to Swedo Bridge from one day before. Professor stood up first, held his hand out to me. He easily pulled me up, then handed me an umbrella. It was an umbrella that matched his Western style one, but in a different size.
早く水上くんの元へ向かいましょう。
I nodded firmly at Hakase-kun's suggestion and ran back into the city.
水上は神保町に来るとき、行きは市電、帰りは歩きと決まっているんです。
We watched the crowd on Hakusan Street. As we took refuge from the rain under the eaves of the closed shops. If we waited here, we'd definitely run into Minakami. I ran my eyes over the people coming and going as I tapped my foot in annoyance. I wouldn't hold back once I saw him. I grabbed him by the collar, threw him into Hikawa's residence, no question asked. It was like admitting that all my anguish from before was a waste, but I didn't care how it looked anymore. My impatience eventually started to infect Hakase-kun. So now 3 eyes were frantically looking around Hakusan Street because he wore an eye patch. That's so funny. But we watched several streetcars come and go after that. We didn't even see a single Imperial University uniform, let alone Minakami. He's probably the only man who slipped out between classes just to go to Chimbocho.
博士、今何時何分ですか
？13時15分です。
Wouldn't the film be starting at Toyo Kinema soon?
彼は歩きで来たのでは？
That shouldn't have been the case. But since he really didn't seem to be coming, there was nothing I could tell him.
梅鉢島に帰ります。橋姫を私に戻すのです。
I started to run before I finished speaking.
玉森くん、待ってください。もう少しゆっくり走ってもらっていいですか？
Be careful, he's sick.
ごめんなさい、こんな時に。本当にごめんなさい。運動が苦手で。
My poor baby, he said as he touched his left eyelid. I instantly calmed down and walked up to him.
私こそせいてすみません。左目。
お気になさらず。
When I tried to look into it, he turned away as fast as he could. He slipped by me and walked towards Umebachido at a quick pace.
博士。
やっぱり無理してる？
What happened? What's wrong with his eye? What is it with his eye? Is it like popping out? Like what? Umebachido doors were already open. That was the proof that I had already come back to the shop. I timidly peeked inside, but my figure wasn't there. He wasn't behind the bookshelves or at the register either. I ran up to the second floor and jumped towards the fishbowl. The water was cloudy. My other self hadn't come back here? Then why was the door open? There was no copy of Dr. Magra on the shelf, so there was no Minakami that come here either. Everything had been the same up till now. The more I went back in time, the further I got from the original world I've been in. I relaxed my tense shoulders and closed my mouth, which had fallen open at some point.
玉森くん。
He called out my name as if I'd figured everything out. I barely turned around, my brows trembling helplessly.
まだもう一人の僕がいますから。時を戻すことは可能です。安心してください。
あなたさえいなくなっていたら。
それはありえません。
How can you say that for sure? We both seen the impossible enough to rot our eyes out. But I swallowed those words down.
君を狂わす何者かは君に間違いないでしょう。しかもなぜか君には君の考えが読め、君の目的を良しとしていない。
My goal? Save Minakami?
そんなの私ではない。
それを確かめる方法は一つだけあります。
Hakase-kun reached for his breast pocket. A heavy metallic sound came from his chest.
な
He aimed a gun at me. More than anything, it was his dead serious gaze that froze me in place and left no room for jokes.
何を。
僕にも確かめたいことがあるのです。そのために君を殺めます。
Excuse what?
待ってください、博士。
I staggered backwards until my legs hit my desk. Even though I was distracted by the swaying fishbowl, I leaned against the window.
さっきも言いましたが、時を戻す猶予はあります。失敗するようなことはあっても、僕に恐れはありません。僕にとって君の代わりはたくさんいます。
Excuse me?
確かめたいことって何なのだ。
No, he's playing mind games, right? He's playing mind games. Where was the Hakase-kun from before? Where had the submissiveness gone? Never allowed such violence. As soon as I was about to clench my fist and start yelling, there was the click of the gun being cocked. Instantly, my brow raised and my mouth fell open.
待て、聞いてください、博士。私は正直あなたが嫌いだった。でも今はあなたのことを。
Consider you my friend. The sound of gunshot went flying by my left ear. The glass behind me shattered to pieces, and I fainted. You know, he didn't shoot me, right? A story of the past. What do you call the phenomenon when you're crossing a bridge being blown around by the wind and the person next to you suddenly seemed dependable? There's a strange rock formation called Dono Hitsuri that's not all from my home in the country. I went sightseeing there once with Minakami. We were going to walk across the bridge that led to the cliff. Unfortunately, it kept raining day after day. The rising water made the large river swell even larger, like an undulating snake. So I ended up turning black halfway across the bridge before we could make it to the base of the cliff. Words couldn't explain how dependable Minakami was at the time. Even after seeing the raging waters, he had smiled cheerfully and gazed upon a strange rock formation obscured by a fog, saying he had seen it once in a dream, offering his nonsensical impression. However, because Minakami was smiling in his usual way, I felt like I had been saved. The feelings I had for Minakami during that time, I now had for Hakase-kun. And yet, despite that, wasn't I being treated pretty poorly? When I suddenly woke up, there was a river flowing beneath my feet. And I say beneath my feet, there was quite a bit distance between my toes and the surface of the water. The wind made my body sway. As soon as I noticed my waist felt tight, I realized I was being tied along with my arms. I looked around. I was finally absolutely certain of what was going on. I was strung up. I looked great. This place was like 3 large rivers put together. Was clearly Sumida Bridge.
玉森くん、おはようございます。
Ohayo gozaimasu. Why are you doing this, babe? All of a sudden, Hakase-kun's voice came running down from above. I was going to glare back at the shameless tone, but unable to turn my neck, I couldn't look up.
貴様、何を考えて。
玉森くん、初めて出会った時のこと覚えていますか？
覚えておらんというか、警察は何をしている。
映画の撮影中だと連絡してあります。少しお金を渡したら通行規制もかけてくださりました。
Wow. Oh my god. What an incompetent police force.
僕は君と出会った時のことよく覚えています。床に突っ伏して原稿を書き殴っていて、その日の僕は君の後ろで君の原稿を読んでいました。
That was the first time we met? I thought we met long after. I mean, long before. He was an incomprehensible storyteller. I spat out a bitter saliva bubbling up in my mouth.
2度目のことも覚えています。レジが壊れたと君は困っていたでしょう。実はあれ、 僕が事前に壊していたんです。
Hakase! You stalker bitch!
君と話すきっかけが欲しくて。
意味がわからん。
意味なわからん. There was a reason to make me listen to a story like that in a place like this. If this were solid ground, I could face him. I would have grabbed him by the collar, shaken him as hard as I could. Probably would have been satisfied with just that, though.
僕は打算的な男なんです。
打算。
君にはまだたくさんの嘘をついている。こんな僕でも友と思ってくれますか？
I told you he's a little bit funky and freaky, but I kind of like my man a little bit crazy.
思って欲しくばさっさと釣り上げろ。
Solid.
聞かせてください。
聞かせてください. Hakase-kun whispered, almost straining his voice. He wasn't joking this time.
聞いて何とするのだ。
次の世界で嫌われないように最善を尽くします。
Eh? Hakase-kun was awfully calm. Maybe I should have been more suspicious of his unconditional devotion for me to start. There was something he was seeking his own way. His chance for finding it was right this moment. I faced straight ahead and watched the Sumida fridge flowing in the distance in a daze. The boundary between the sky and the earth was melted away by the rain, merging into white. It's a mystical landscape that can be seen during the short season between spring and summer, I thought.
博士、私はずっとあなたのことを勘違いしていました。私の友にふさわしいのはあなたみたいな大バカ者だとやっと気づけたんです。だがそうと理解するにはまた長い時間がかかることでしょう。だから友になれるのは今の私しかいないと思います。
Gaslight to the max.
命乞いですか？
Yeah. I ended up my brief laughter and started to let out a low groan. There was no way I could escape from this situation. I looked around thinking there had been another way, but there was nothing that could save me. Suddenly, the ropes stringing me up began to creak and sway. This sound, this swaying, there was no mistaking it. There was a blade against the rope. The rope sounded like the string of a bow being snapped, much more distorted.
おい博士、自分が何をしているか分かっているのか。お前は私を
To kill me? Since the rope seemed like it would sway even more if I screamed that, I eventually fell silent. But again, I doubt it, right? Because he had a gun. If he wanted to kill me, he would have shot me. I think this is his ploy to get the other me to come out, right? Hakase cut away at the rope, his gaze even more gentle.
苦しむ君をもう見たくないんです。君が眠っているうちに僕はもう一人の僕に触れてきました。ここで君を殺したらすぐに水たまりに飛び込もうと思います。僕が君を幸せにしてみせますから。
He put the knife against the last string holding me up. I worried my final words would be cursing Hakase-kun or a scream as I fell into the water. Either way, it didn't change the fact that one of those would be the last thing I cried out before I died.
博士！
Hakase!
あとはすべてこの僕に任せてください。さようなら、玉森くん。
I closed my eyes tight and clenched my teeth. I didn't even have the courage to bite my tongue off instead, which made me realize just how much a coward I was. I finally resolved myself to wait for death and waited some more, but the spider thread holding me up had yet to snap. Suddenly, as I listened closely with my right ear, I caught the sound of unfamiliar footsteps. It was the sound of shoes with worn-out heels. The man stopped in his tracks. Hakase-kun seemed to face him too. Wind blew in the opposite direction, taking the light rain with it.
君は昔から危なっかしい男だね。
It was a voice full of exasperation, like he was scolding a child. Rather than scolding him because he saw what was going on here, it seemed like he had been watching all of Hakase-kun's eccentricity. Like he had been watching Hakase-kun the whole time. His tone had a tinge of gentleness to it.
久しぶりだね。覚えているかい？
I know this voice, because I had been under the protection of this voice before too. Even though the man I knew was there, how frightened I was. He slowly continued to speak.
15年前だったかな。 橋から落ちそうになった君を私が助けてあげたのは、喜十郎くんと言ったね。
喜十郎くん、Hikawa?
僕もあなたを忘れたことはなかった。
So the one you liked was not, well, technically it wasn't me, but older version of me. The reason Hakase-kun's voice shook wasn't because he was overjoyed at their union. It was grief, disappointment. Hakase-kun seemed to be wounded by sorrow deeper when I insulted him. What's happening? I'm not sure that even if I were to ask, no one would so much look at me right now. While hanging beside death. I was a silent spectator, a single bystander, so I had no choice but to remain a witness to this tragedy.
あなたが僕に話してくれた物語を今でも覚えています。僕はあなたの物語に生かされてきました。あなたにまた見つけてもらえるようにと、この吾妻橋に何度も通っていたんです。だから嬉しいです。そして来てほしくなかったとも思っています。こうすればあなたをおびき出せると思っていました。だってあなたは玉森くん自身だから。
I'm still so fucking confused, guys.
何の話だ。
黙っていてごめんなさい。僕は最初から君が何者か分かっていて近づいたのです。君を傷つけようとすればこうしてあなたにまた出会えることも。
Well, he is a cunning man.
でも僕にも分からないことがあります。未来のあなたがどうして玉森くんを傷つけ守ろうともするのか。あなたはこの世界をどうしたいというのですか。
That wasn't the kind of thing you said to someone you despised. Hakase-kun, that man, the me from the future, was the embodiment of horror fantasy he had admired for so long.
君はウロボロスという伝説の生き物を知っているかい。何の葛藤もなく望みもなく現状に満足してしまっている愚か者、つまり私のことだよ。
どういうことですか。
分子に必要なのは体験だ。本物の怪奇幻想を除形する力を得るには水面を揺らす必要がある。
I had experienced several things that seemed like fiction, but I had made an effort to understand them each time. I understood them, I accepted them, I came to grips with things that I should have never been able to experience. And yet, this was probably the first time I didn't want to believe it.
しかし氷川君、君の行動は全く読めなかったよ。この雨がまさか君のせいだとはね。おかげでこちらの手は狂い、後がなくなってしまった。
The voice is too insane for him to predict. Okay.
彼をそこから助けてやってはくれないか。私の邪魔をしないでくれたまえ。
よくわかりました。あなたが間違いなく玉森くんであり、すべてはあなたの望んでいたことなのだと。
君は相変わらず物分かりがいい。ならばその銃を下ろしてくれないかい。
Yeah, I couldn't understand what was going through Hakase-kun's mind. Not one bit. Were his eyes clouded with rage or were they black with sorrow?
君は優しい子だったはずだ。君に私が殺せるかい？
Probably, yeah.
僕が守りたいのはあなたじゃない。
It's the current me. His voice strained. Hakase-kun pulled the trigger. The dull sound of the shot echoed through the area. Wouldn't that, angered our boy, our white boy? This man should have been a hero to Hakase-kun. Hakase-kun had gotten close to me so he could tell this man how he felt about him. Beam
僕
him!
にとっては奇跡です。
No, Mickey! He fast forwarded the story! No! God. Mickey! This man should have been a hero to Hakase-kun. Hakase-kun had come close to me so he could tell this man how he felt about him. He had come this far just to meet him. Right at that moment, the rope that was stringing me up began to creak again. The river was below. It didn't matter if I could use my arms or not. I couldn't swim, so there's no way I could get out alive. My body fluttered down. The moment I let go of his consciousness, I was jerked back up.
ごめんなさい、玉森くん。ちょっとやりすぎてしまいましたね。
Kinda, yeah. Hakase-kun spoke in his usual tone of voice. So he killed the old me? He pulled me up while I was still in shock. The bridge was quiet. The neighboring rail bridge was as noisy as ever. But for some reason, it felt like we were the only two people left in this world. At the end, Hakase-kun's gaze was an unfamiliar man, lying face down. Once my ropes were removed, I slowly approached him. I could tell he was still breathing.
私に触れなさい。
Yurenasai. He stretched out his blood-covered hand. The tips of his fingers convulsed like a fish out of water. More than my future self being there. More than my reunion with the shopkeeper end up being like this. Right now what I had a hard time dealing with was the fact that someone was dying in front of me. The moment I touched that hand, he turned to water and soaked into the bridge. He might have been smiling at the end. This was me after all. Feeling of something like a contempt ran from my hand through my entire body.
私は本当にあなたに救われる価値などあったのでしょうか。あなたを助けたのだってただの偶然だ。
I know, right? The shopkeeper's memories were merging inside of me.
僕にとっては奇跡です。後悔などしていませんよ。僕が大事なのは今の君です。
No.
嘘つかないでください。
I stood up and threw my feelings of helplessness at him.
あなたにとって今の私には何の価値もない。
そんなこと。
ならこれが正しい終わり方なのですか。私はあなたに
Kill someone. Moreover, someone important to him.
君とあの人は同一人物でした。でも僕が一番大切なのは今の君です。
Lies.
君に出会えてよかった。
It's obviously a lie.
どうして強がるんですか。本当に生きてて欲しかったのは
Wasn't me.
玉森くん。
Clearly, I was an unnecessary character in this drama. If I weren't around, if the story were only about Hakase-kun and this man, this tragedy could have been called comedy.
もうたくさんだ。
Tamamori.
玉森くん、どうか僕の。
私はこの男の代わりにはなれない。
Hakase-kun shook his head. Instead of telling me I was wrong, he shed beautiful tears. I really did hate Hakase-kun. I became a terrible person when he was around. I became the moon, night, shadow, darkness, someone completely incapable of being loved. His pure, pleading eyes left me exposed. If only he didn't have those eyes, if only he weren't giving me that look.
私はあなたの知ってる私じゃない。
We should have never met. The moment I tried to yell that at him, Hakase-kun pressed his hand against his left eye and fell to his knees. His teeth were clenched in pain. Even I couldn't make out his expression. I could tell he was in terrors of agony.
博士。
Aww.
ごめんなさい。
He was apologizing for some unknown reason. I hurriedly ran up and shook him by his raised shoulder. He tensed as if to distance themselves from me. I grabbed his hands and slowly exposed the face they were hiding. His left eye, which should have been looking at me, was starting around in a unnatural direction.
眠れば治りますから。
Eh?
ごめんなさい。本当にごめんなさい。
What? What is in his eye? What is in his eye? What the fuck is in his eye? Consumed by that stormy gray eye, even my own vision started to blur. The vague clarity of fog was even scarier than the unending darkness. What's happening to Hakase-kun? I couldn't tell if there was anything I could do. Once I felt I should be the one apologizing, I wouldn't stop. Eh? I happened to lift my face as Sun was standing there. She looked down at me, with an uneasy look on her face as she wrung her hands. Slowly stood up against the wall and walked towards the room she had just come out from. I knew she wouldn't continue what she was going to say. I ignored her and went into the room. Hakase-kun was lying in his bed on his back. Oh my god, what? Okay, we have to leave the mystery for the next episode. We played quite long. I'm probably gonna continue this directly because I need to know what the fuck is wrong with this eye. So, with that being said, I have to end it there today. I'm very sorry to leave you on a cliffhanger, but honestly, this is probably my favorite route because, like, what the fuck? What the fuck? Also, Hakase-kun is literally has been my dream man since the start, and he's continued giving. He's green. He's a little bit kooky. I love him. Yandere boys. He reminds me so much of Firefly Wedding guy. I love that guy. I love that man so much. Goto Shinpei, you can have my heart. Anyway, with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this Spooktober and Hashihime season 4. Which again has been all waiting, and as always I've been playing this game each year on October, so hopefully you know, we're gonna close this game like season 5 maybe. I think there's like one more ending with the white guy, but I don't know. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Wait for the next episode coming real soon because I'm probably gonna record this again after this. So anyway, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.